Revealed, the sinister secrets of the haunted Europa War Trial that terrorized thousands online. Sarah's heart raced as she stumbled down the dimly lit street, shadows closing in on her. Whispers of the Europa War Trial seeped through the cracks of her once comfortable town, a trial that had left blood-stained secrets buried deep in the earth. The unsolved murders. The town had grown tense, families locking their doors tight at night, children too frightened to play outside. The sound of footsteps echoed behind her. She could feel the air shift, the world around her sharp with dread. In the local diner where Sarah worked late shifts, laughter echoed but felt hollow. Regulars sipped their coffee, oblivious to the dark clouds rolling in, the way Mr. Thompson's eyes glimmered with something unsettling when he told his chilling stories of the trial. He spoke of secrets buried within the walls of a long-abandoned school, the very school where horrific events had unfolded decades ago. That same haunted ground now twisted inside Sarah's mind. With each tale, her gut churned, and the hairs on her arms stood like soldiers ready for battle. Half-hearted laughs and shivering nerves surrounded her, tightening like a noose. The nights grew longer, and Sarah's resolve wavered. She dismissed the peculiar messages surfacing online, all claiming to be from the restless specter of a victim, pulling her toward a truth that felt just out of reach. "Leave while you can," it read, and she scoffed. "Just folklore, spread by anxious minds." But then she found that crumpled note under her door, the same words haunting her. Panic clawed at her throat, choking her breath. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days became nightmares as she honed in on her neighbors. A dog barking at nothing. The stray wind shifting leaves like fingers across the schoolyard gate. Her friendly community morphed into a cluster of shadows, each smile a knife poised at her back. With every ticking second, the fear latched tighter against her, a suffocating embrace ringing warnings in her ears. Her children played innocently, unaware of the darkness swirling around them. But she was no longer the mother shielding them from worries. She felt the gnawing, spiraling thread of paranoia weave through her soul. She withdrew from friendly conversations, searching for signs of deceit and danger where laughter once resided. The police had dismissed her concerns as fatigue and stress. But Sarah sensed it, the scent of age-old horrors creeping closer, mingling with fresh blood. Through the chilling chants and church bells echoing in her dreams, she glimpsed a monstrous reality. Mr. Thompson, the town's beloved historian, concealed the darkness beneath his thin smile. As she ventured deeper into the muddied waters of her town's history, the lines blurred between past and present. The shadows lurked closer, whispering secrets entwined with painful cries. In her heart, she heard the warning rush, "It's not the ghost you should fear." The weight of truth clawed at her. Could the familiar smiles around her really conceal a vicious predator? With trembling hands, Sarah stood at a precipice. The truth bared its teeth, yet she knew one thing: she couldn't flee. As she faced the chilling echoes of the war trial, resolve hardened in her, and she readied herself to uncover what lay beneath. The only thing scarier than the spectral warnings might just be her neighbors, waiting to strike when the night dimmed into silence. The haunting mystery wasn't just in the unsolved murders. It lived right next door. The air felt thick as Sarah pushed open the door to the old school, the creaking hinges screeching like a warning. It loomed before her, a skeletal reminder of faded innocence and buried terror. Dust motes danced in the narrow beams of sunlight, but there was no warmth. Every step she took inside was a battle against an iron grip of dread, squeezing the breath from her lungs. Her heart hammered violently as she navigated through the long-abandoned hallways. The walls whispered, the scars of the past weaving through the peeling paint. What had once been classrooms were now nothing more than tombs of memories: shattered glass, overturned chairs, the faint echo of laughter drowned in the darkness of its own demise. Sarah's fingers trembled as she traced the dusty blackboards, remnants of lessons long forgotten. She could almost see the ghostly figures of children learning, unaware of the monstrous reality that hid behind the corners, ready to pounce. A chill skated along her spine, and she wiped her clammy hands on her jeans. The growing urge to flee warred against her determination to uncover the truth. Eyes darting, she moved cautiously. a noise, a soft thud made her freeze. It echoed through the silence, a pulsating reminder that she wasn't alone. Dread pooled in the pit of her stomach, creeping upward like an ominous fog. Was it a trick of the mind or a real threat? The stories whispered about in the diner began to churn at the back of her mind, shadows of suffering, cruelty, and blood soaking into the very foundations of the town. "Get out," she whispered to herself, forcing the command past trembling lips. But her feet refused to obey. Instead, they took her deeper into the darkness, drawn by an unseen force, a sinister curiosity. A flicker of movement caught her eye. Was it just a shadow or something lurking just beyond the reach of her vision? In a dilapidated classroom, Sarah found a solitary desk, half buried under a decade's worth of dust. Underneath, she spotted old newspapers yellowed with age, the faded headlines screaming stories of the past. "Trial updates, mysterious disappearances continue," one headline read. Her breath caught in her throat, panic bubbling just under the surface. Before she could stop herself, she knelt down to sift through the brittle pages. Each article hinted at a chilling link, a series of unsolved murders connected to the war trial. Names repeated, faces twisted in photographs, a web of agony stretched across the town, and she could feel its pull tightening around her heart. Suddenly, a loud bang shattered the oppressive silence. Sarah jumped to her feet, eyes wide with terror. A door somewhere in the building clapped against its frame, vibrating through the silence like a death knell. She wasn't alone. The sensation of being watched crawled across her skin, 1,000 tiny insects burrowing beneath. "Who's there?" Sarah called, her voice barely a whisper, tinged with desperation. No reply, just the echo of her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. She sprinted for the exit, urgency propelling her forward. As she reached for the door, the air around her changed, heavy, cold, as if the walls themselves were alive, urging her to stay. But she pushed through, fear lending strength to her shaking hands. Outside, she gasped, gulping the night air. Shadows loomed, dark shapes twisting under the streetlights. Fumbling in her pocket, she pulled out her phone, desperate for connection. But the screen was black, unresponsive, as if mocking her plight. Panic consumed her. She had to warn someone. Everyone needed to know. Behind her, a figure emerged from the school, cloaked in darkness. A familiar silhouette, Mr. Thompson, stepping into the light with a smile that was thin and cruel. "Did you find what you were looking for?" he asked, his voice a silken whisper laced with menace. The words struck her like a punch. She turned to run, but he was now standing in her path, blocking her escape. "What have you gotten into, Sarah?" he asked, his eyes glimmering with a sinister knowing, just as she prepared to fight her way. Past him, her phone buzzed in her pocket, suddenly alive. Was it a lifeline or another thread twisting into her demise? And then, below the hum of her racing heart, she heard whispers, low and urgent, creeping closer as darkness blossomed around her. What secrets had she awakened? Would anyone truly believe her if she made it out? The questions haunted her as she stood frozen, caught in the web, unsure of who, if anyone, she could trust. A split second felt like an eternity. Mr. Thompson's eyes bore into her, a pit of darkness that swallowed all hope. Fear pinned Sarah in place, her instincts screamed to turn and run. The cacophony of whispers grew louder, vibrating through the air like a haunting song, coaxing her into the shadows. "Step aside," she hissed, desperation bubbling beneath her skin. But he remained steadfast, a wall of malevolence. "Not yet, Sarah. There is so much you still don't understand." His voice dripped with mockery, the corners of his lips creeping into a grin that sent ice flooding through her veins. Something twisted within her, a fierce urge to push past him. But even as adrenaline surged, she could feel it, the cold grip of reality closing in. His presence was not just foreboding, it felt like a statement, a declaration that the truth she sought was a mere illusion. What do you want from me?" she stammered, forcing her voice steady despite the tremor in her lips, trying to glean any semblance of power from the situation. "Want? Oh dear, it's not about what I want," he crooned, his brown eyes glinting with something dark and unfathomable. "It's about what you need to know before you run off into the night." Suddenly, the whispers crescendoed, echoing her thoughts, weaving a tapestry of despair and truth that hung heavy in the air. A flash of movement blurred past the edge of her vision, a large shadow darting from one streetlight to another, too fast to identify. Was it a person or something more sinister? Do you see them? The ones who were wronged? Mr. Thompson's voice drizzled like thick honey, sickly sweet yet laced with poison. They linger here, waiting. You've disturbed their rest. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to know. She blurted, but the words sounded empty. Just noise in a place drenched in sorrow. Knowing comes at a price, Sarah. He stepped closer, every crack in the pavement resonating as he did. You have awakened them. How brave of you. The shadows behind him shifted, almost alive, swirling around like specters desperate for attention. Anxiety clawed at her throat, and she took a half step back, but he was faster, blocking her escape route completely. Isn't it time for you to meet your friends? His voice took on a mocking lilt. Join me on a little tour of the past. Wishful sometimes, the foolishness of the living. Before she could respond, he extended his arm, and in that instant, the night grew darker. A chilling wind swooped through, wrapping around her like a lover's embrace, tugging her backwards. The whispers reached a fever pitch, shrill cries of accusation echoing in her ears. In her mind flashed the images from the old newspapers, faces of the missing, dark eyes filled with terror. She clenched her fists, knowing she was at a precipice, a decision pushing against her ribcage like a hammer. Stop! She shouted, her voice raw with defiance, surprising even herself. This isn't over. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, she bolted past him, ducking under his outstretched arm. She felt the wind gust behind her, a cold breath chasing her into the street, but the shadows whispered louder now, desperate to reclaim their own. Just as she reached the edge of the light, a frigid hand grasped her ankle, sending her tumbling to the ground. Pain shot through her as she landed hard, gasping for breath, but when she turned to look back, the figure was gone and the darkness seemed to sigh, leaving her alone. Panic surged again, she scrambled to her feet, heart racing, yearning for the safety of the starlit streets. But where to run? Where could she escape this madness? Then, out of the corner of her eye, she spotted something glimmering on the pavement, a broken relic from the school, a photo of a smiling child. Heart pounding, she reached for it, a revelation igniting in her chest. What had they taken from her? What connection did she share with this haunting past? Just then, the phone buzzed in her pocket again, a sharp reminder of the urgency. Grabbing it, she glanced at the screen, breath caught in her throat. A message from an unknown number lit up, words chilling enough to send her stumbling back. Help is coming, but you must trust me, Sarah. A thudding beat echoed between her ears. Who was this? And could she trust them? Questions ricocheted in her mind like ricocheting bullets, each one a deafening reminder that she was still trapped within the web of terror. How far down the rabbit hole had she unwittingly dived? But the whispers grew louder once again, a taunting cacophony slowly engulfing her. What followed next would change everything, but could she brave the unknown? Would the relinquished fears of others become her own? As she stood in the depth of the night, a new whisper came forth, shadowing the others, "You're not alone yet." The moment Sarah read the chilling message, a warmth broke through the cold night as if a beacon flickered to life within her. But it was snuffed quickly by the gusting winds, violent and unforgiving. Heart-hammering, she backed away slowly from the shadows. The glimmering photo slipped from her fingers and clattered to the ground. She could almost hear it scream against the pavement, drawing unwanted attention. "Help is coming," she whispered the words, but they tangled with the gusts, lost to the night and the whispers of the dead. Who was this unknown helper? Was it a trick from the shadows or a glimmer of hope? She turned away from the shadows, deciding which way to run, but the night felt oversized, full of pressing darkness. Suddenly, a shrill scream pierced the air, not her own, but echoing through the depths of the alley. Panic twisted her stomach tighter than a vice. Was someone else trapped like her? Before she had a chance to think twice, her feet propelled her towards the sound. Each step felt like it bore the weight of every ghost that had shadowed her path. She rounded the corner, where a flickering streetlight waged a losing battle against encroaching darkness. The scene was surreal. A figure crouched low, teetering on the brink of madness. An older woman, wild-eyed and grasping at her own hair. Her breaths came strained, ragged, as if she were caught in an eternal nightmare. "Help me!" The woman gasped, locking eyes with Sarah, her expression shifting from agony to desperation. They want tea, let me go. They want my. Before she could finish, something black and viscous slithered from the shadows, leaping towards the woman. Sarah's heart lurched, a cold sweat breaking out on her skin. The writhing mass was a tangible shadow, luminous in its hatred, its tendrils curling eagerly for its prize. No! The word tore from Sarah's throat, both a warning and a plea. She charged forward, fear galvanizing her resolve. With a swift kick, she aimed for the dark mass, but it recoiled and spun with unimaginable speed, striking the ground where she had been moments ago. The force spiraled back, sending Sarah stumbling off balance, mind racing at the impossible vision. The woman screamed, her voice gnarled in pain as the shadow wrapped around her legs, pulling her into its depths. Sarah watched helplessly as the darkness engulfed the woman, eyes wide with horror before she vanished completely, leaving behind nothing but regret and whispering echoes of despair. "What do you want?" Sarah screamed into the night, clutching her phone for comfort. But the whispers only rose in response, snaking through the air, filling her mind with despair like an oily fog. In the midst of this chaos, the phone buzzed once more. With trembling hands, she opened it, her heart racing as a second message came through. "Find the truth before it finds you." A shiver cascaded down her spine, her mind racing to piece the fragmented puzzle together. What truth? The weight of the night grew heavier, like shackles locking her fate behind her. The shadows danced, cruel and alive, mocking her search for answers. Fear clawed up her throat. How was she supposed to escape this darkness when even her own mind felt like a betrayal, but deep down, a flicker ignited? She needed to confront the shadows and the unsettling truth they cloaked. With a newly forged resolution, Sarah turned back toward the alley from where the woman had cried out. If there was more to uncover, she wouldn't be the one to cower. She wouldn't let the darkness swallow her whole. Yet, as she stepped deeper into that dense night, the whispers twisted, entwining her spirit with their chill, warning her of the sinister web that awaited, what awaited her in the heart of the darkness. Would it be the path to her liberation, or a descent into further terror? The night beckoned her forward, the shadows swirling in a siren song, promising that answers could only be found if she dared to take the next step. The paint on the walls of the alley seemed to shift as Sarah moved deeper into the inky blackness. Each step echoed, loud against the eerie silence, as if the shadows were holding their breath, waiting. Her heart pounded in her chest, a frantic drumbeat urging her to just turn around and flee. But the message flickered in her mind, find the truth before it finds you. A faint glow suddenly caught her eye, a light, oh so faint, radiating from a doorway at the far end of the alley. It pulsed, beckoning her like the siren call of a distant shore. Struggling against the gnawing fear, she approached, gritting her teeth as she stepped closer to the unknown. The door creaked open on rusted hinges, revealing what looked like an old, abandoned warehouse. Dust motes danced lazily through the air, caught in the shimmering glow of a single lamp that sputtered like an anxious heart. The atmosphere was thick, the air heavy with a scent of decay and something acrid. "Hello?" Her voice trembled, barely audible against the oppressive silence. No response. The lamp flickered again, and she hesitated. Shadows stretched ominously across the walls, seeming to come alive, reaching for her like desperate hands. With every instinct honed by fear, she advanced into the space, peering into the cold open room. Nothing. But lurking just beyond the edge of her vision lurked that unshakable feeling, the sensation she was not alone. She could feel it creeping in, a knowing chill climbing up her spine as if fingers of suspicion were slowly tightening around her throat. The truth lurked somewhere, and it was watching her. Then, from the corner of her eye, something moved. Flashes of memory danced through her mind, news reports, hushed conversations on the street, the stories of the Europa War Trial that had sent shockwaves through the nation. What had begun as a trial of justice had morphed into a harrowing tale of unthinkable horrors, allegations of dark sorcery, whispers of unnatural forces unleashed on both sides. Sarah shook her head. This wasn't the time for memories. She needed to keep moving. As she ventured further inside, her footsteps echoed, amplifying the sensation of being stalked. The flicker of the lamp cast long shadows, while the corners of the warehouse remained obscured, dark and foreboding. It felt like some secret was waiting just out of reach, taunting her. Find it. The whispering voices from the shadows felt close, almost tangible. They bore weight to Sarah's feet, urging her to connect the dots. But every fiber of her being screamed for her to flee, dissuaded by the lurking dread. Ahead, she spotted a cluttered table, littered with old files, newspaper clippings, and photos. Her curiosity piqued, she stepped closer, searching for anything that might reveal the truth. Her eyes widened as she recognized one of the faded images, a crowd of people, a figure standing out among them, gripping a sign that read "Justice for the Lost." It was her. Confusion churned in her stomach. How was this possible? She had never been there. A sudden crash of metal echoed behind her, like chains pulled taut. Panic surged. "Get out," a voice hissed, cold and sandpapered. She whirled, heart thundering. The shadows pressed closer, pulsating like a living creature. It was as if they were alive, hungry for something, and she had unknowingly wandered into their territory. In a burst of blind instinct, she darted to a side door framed in heavy steel. Desperation fueled her as she tried the knob, but it was locked tight. The buzzing whispers rose around her, now a cacophony of mocking laughter. She pounded her fists against the door, adrenaline surging. What had she uncovered? With frenzied hits, she tried to kick the door open. It wouldn't budge. Shadows danced all around her, laughter mixing with terrified screams, swirling in discontent. Suddenly, a heavy thud vibrated against the wall next to her. Heart racing, Sarah spun to see a figure emerging from the blackness, a silhouette, obscured by the lingering darkness. She couldn't make out a face, but those eyes glinted with an unsettling hunger. "Find the truth," it whispered, its breath chilling her to the core. Or become part of it. With terror flooding her veins, Sarah realized she had to confront whatever this darkness was. But now she also understood truth was not just a search, but a gamble. "Run!" echoed in her ears as she charged back towards the doorway, her only hope to escape before the darkness claimed not just her body, but her very essence. Would she make it out alive, or was the truth waiting to devour her whole? The shadows shifted, something told her it would be a race against time, and the darkness was gaining ground. The lock on the heavy steel door clattered in its frame as Sarah slammed her shoulder against it, a desperate attempt to break free. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps, and every heartbeat echoed like thunder in the confined space. She knew she was running out of time. The oppressive silence of the warehouse was thick, a palpable curtain woven with dread, mocking her frantic escape attempts. Behind her, the figure's presence loomed, a shadow cast upon darkness, eyes gleaming with a malevolence that twisted her gut. "Truth," it whispered, voice low and conspiratorial, as if her name lingered on its lips, thick with promise and threat. "You can't escape what you don't understand." She stumbled, choking back a rising panic, as the whispers swirled around her. They seemed to reverberate from all corners, echoes of the past converging on her like a storm. Memories surfaced again, images of the trial, screams for justice drowned out by a tide of shadows. Had she really thought digging into this history would bring clarity? Instead, it pulled her deeper into a void. Sarah's legs churned, finding a speed fueled by raw instinct rather than thought. She darted from the table, left everything behind but the chilling memory of her own face in that photograph, unyielding in its grasp of the truth. A truth that was painfully close, yet always just beyond reach. Before her, a corridor loomed, dark and twisting. She hesitated, the shadows stretched and flared like hungry beasts. The thing behind her was relentless, closing the distance with each passing moment. Mustering her courage, she bolted forward, adrenaline coursing through her veins as fear propelled her. "Get out!" The voice came again, this time louder, filled with both urgency and malice. It wasn't just a warning, it was a command. The walls seemed to close in on her, narrowing the path. Had this place been built as a trap? A wicked puzzle meant to ensnare any seeker of the truth. She reached a door at the end of the passage, different from the steel barrier that had thwarted her. This one was wooden, old, splintered around the edges, but it seemed to offer a flicker of hope. Metal hinges creaked, promising a way to freedom. With trembling hands, she yanked the door open, and a gust of dank air rushed to meet her. She stumbled into a room cloaked in darkness, the last remnants of light fading behind her. As the door swung shut with a deafening bang, she felt the cold slap of panic rush over her. Was she running towards safety or deeper into the snare? The room was a clutter of old boxes and discarded tools, thick with dust and despair. But in the far corner, a shimmering light pulsing softly like a heartbeat. It felt wrong. There was something alive and watching, just like her heart. She wasn't alone here. Uncover the secrets. The voice echoed, wrapping around her like an icy finger. Shadows extended from the corners, flicking at her heels and raising the hairs along her neck. In her racing mind, a fragment of memory surfaced from the depths of the Europa War Trial. Whispers of sorcery, the price of revealing the past, the terrors unleashed on those who sought to shine light on dark corners. Was she part of the very curse that had plagued so many? Sarah moved toward the light cautiously, every instinct warning her against it. Just before she reached the source, the air thickened, and realization washed over her like ice. The truth wasn't a guide, it was a predator. With a sudden snap, the lights flickered and then went cold. A suffocating darkness enveloped her, drowning the last vestiges of hope. Fear clung to her, suffocating her breaths as her heartbeat echoed like war drums in her ears. In that harrowing moment, she understood, she had not come here to find the truth. No, she had opened a door to the horrors of what lay beyond, and now, the shadows were ready for her. Embrace it, they murmured, beckoning her back. What lay within was more than she ever bargained for, a reality twisted by forces she couldn't comprehend. As stretched silence held her once more, and unmistakable. Dread seeped in. A dreadful realization sank heavy in her gut. What if the darkness wasn't just after her? What if it was part of her all along, waiting patiently to emerge? And in that chilling moment of clarity, she felt the flicker of hope extinguish completely. A piercing scream echoed from somewhere deep within the building. Was it her own voice, or had she finally awakened something else? In the thickening shadows, she took a step back. What would she do now? Would she face whatever emerged, or turn back into the void? The ominous whispers grew louder, and somewhere, she could feel the world around her shift. Do you dare to know the truth? The darkness growled, hungry and insatiable. Just outside the light, a figure shifted, waiting. Curiosity mixed with fear held her captive. How many had come before her? Sarah froze, breath hitching. She needed to decide. Would she confront the darkness head-on, or would she run from the only truth that threatened to consume her? The truth had a way of revealing itself, and she was still running out of time. The darkness pressed in, wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. Sarah strained her eyes, trying to pierce the thick blackness, straining to grasp what lay 20 steps ahead. The pulsing light was gone, and now all that remained was an ominous stillness, punctuated only by thumps echoing in the distance. The screams had subsided, replaced by an unsettling quiet that felt alive, thrumming with anticipation. Stop, just stop! She shouted, her voice breaking through the heavy silence. Yet her words hung there, swallowed by the void, leaving behind an even more potent feeling of isolation. She took a breath, her heart racing, each beat a countdown to an unseen fate. What if she dared to confront the unknown? What if she didn't? The stakes were impossibly high, balancing precariously, and the whispers intensified as if sensing her indecision. The soft rustle of fabric brushing against skin seemed to spark a flicker of awareness. Cold air cut across her, whispering secrets of the trials she had only started to unfurl. With each heartbeat, doubt surged. Had this all started with her obsession to uncover the truth of the Europa War Trial? Each layer of discovery had churned up long-buried fears. Her hands trembled, and she fought to quell the growing panic. Whatever haunted these walls, it wanted her to know, to join its dance of despair. Taking a step back, her foot found something slick beneath her shoe. She lifted it, recoiling as she looked down. The faint smell of blood tickled her nostrils, reality snapping back into focus. She wasn't just in a dilapidated room, this was a mausoleum of memories, each item a relic of voices silenced too soon. Sarah steadied herself, breathing harshly through clenched teeth. This wasn't merely a fear of the shadows, it was the palpable sense of witnessing stories untold, the nightmares locked away that demanded release. The darkness wasn't just a place. It was a consequence. Who are you? The words burst from her lips, desperate and defiant, shattering the quiet. What do you want from me? The shadows seemed to deepen, swirling as she spoke, forming shapes and figures just beyond her sight. A disembodied laugh echoed in response, cruel and mocking. It felt like a challenge. She had awakened something in this forsaken place. But now it was her choice to stand or flee. With a surge of courage, Sarah took a bold step forward. Whatever held this room captive, she wouldn't passively succumb. She reached for the darkness instead, her fingertips grazing a cold surface, a wall, solid and unyielding, like the haunted truths of her past. "I will not be your pawn," she declared, though her words trembled. The shadows hissed, a cacophony of voices whispering her name in sinister delight. They wanted to claim her, to mold her into part of the history she had stumbled into, becoming yet another lost story within these walls. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and a chilling presence engulfed her. "Stand firm. Fight." Those thoughts clashed against her instinct to run. The ominous whispers throbbed like a heartbeat, a dark symphony surrounding her, and then from the edge of her vision, a glow. Not a flicker but a blaze of light, returning a betrayal, promising refuge. Her heart surged with hope, and in that moment, she lunged toward it. But as she stumbled toward salvation, the laughter morphed into a monstrous roar. "Foolish girl!" The voice slithered through the air, unbearable and echoing. "The truth will swallow you whole." In a flash, the ground trembled beneath her feet, and the walls around her groaned. Objects flew from the shelves like projectiles, crashing around her, air thick with dust and debris. With no way to know where to turn, adrenaline sent her reeling toward the door she'd entered, but the door was gone. Panic surged, claws scratching at her mind. Too late to run. She was trapped, ensnared in a web of terror spun by the very truth she sought to uncover. The shadow circled closer, suffocating her will to fight. Then she saw it, the figure solidifying in the dark, its form more monstrous than before. It towered over her, eyes glowing, grinning with a sickening familiarity. "You wanted to know the truth? Then embrace it." As it lunged, Sarah's scream broke through, echoing, desperate, fading into nothing. Darkness took her once more, but she wasn't alone in it. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of footsteps approached. And with them, the certainty that this was far from over. Sarah stared into the abyss, her heart racing, each breath constricted by panic. The figure loomed before her, shifting between shadows, its form a grotesque mimicry of humanity. Eyes like molten coal bore into her, searing through the darkness. She felt it, an unsettling familiarity that sent chills racing up her spine. The footsteps drew nearer, echoing like a haunting rhythm against the walls that crumbled under the weight of forgotten memories. "They come for you," it hissed, its voice a low growl of malice. "Do you see what you have awakened?" Moments stretched like an eternity as she tried to choke down the fear threatening to erupt. Just like the war trials, Sarah thought, people pitted against one another, their pasts clawing into the present. But this was worse, this was her very human soul at stake. The shadows writhed around her, ensnaring her feet with an icy grip. She fought against it, forcing her body to move, to resist, to breathe. "I didn't ask for this." Her voice, now faint, barely broke through the gale of whispers that consumed the air. "What do you want from me?" "Oh, little girl," the figure mocked, its grin widening, stretching unnaturally across its face. "You know the answer. You crave the truth, and now it will consume you." Just then, a new figure stumbled into the glow. It was a man, disheveled, eyes wild. He paused, glancing towards her with frantic recognition, a spark of life in a realm full of shadows. "Sarah! Don't listen to it!" he shouted, his voice cracking like glass. "It will twist your mind until there's nothing left." Her heart surged with a glimmer of hope. Someone else was here. Someone who understood. But terror curled around that hope, gnawing at her resolve. "Who are you?" she gasped, barely able to take in his presence, desperate to anchor herself. "Peter," he replied. "I was here before you. I thought I could find answers." But his voice fell off, the weight of his experiences sinking into the dark. He didn't need to finish. She could see the haunted look in his eyes. Before she could respond, the laughter erupted again, louder and more sinister, shaking the very ground they stood on. "You think you can escape the truth? It belongs to you now." The shadows recoiled slightly, as if the presence of Peter had shaken something loose. "Together," he urged, desperation fueling his words. "We can break its hold." Heart pounding, they surged toward each other, hands reaching out, finding a fragile connection that pulsed with some remnant of warmth against the encroaching cold. But the moment their fingers brushed, the monstrous figure lunged, a screech spilling from its gaping mouth.
No. You cannot join hands against the darkness.
Terror gripped Sarah like a vice, but she wouldn't let fear paralyze her again.
We're not alone. You can't take us.
She shouted back, ready to fuel every ounce of defiance she possessed. The very walls seemed to reply, echoing their resolve. The fingers intertwined, they felt a surge, a warmth that illuminated the shadows, a light pushing against the gnawing darkness. But as the sinister figure recoiled, a swift rush of cold swept back in, snatching the light and extinguishing it. The thump of footsteps faded as the malevolent figure drew closer, forcing them apart. A split-second decision flashed in Sarah's mind.
We can't let it win.
Her voice rang like a bell, sharper than the echoes of despair. With a feral scream, Peter lunged toward the figure, an act of bravery that defied the odds.
But would it be enough? And in that moment, the creature turned its gaze unyieldingly toward Sarah. You wanted the truth? Then bear witness. As Peter darted forward, a flicker of hope ignited within her, only to drown in a wave of dread.
The shadows tightened, and in the deepening dark, a choice loomed more significant than the moment itself. Would she join Peter's fight, or would she let the truth devour every piece of her? As the walls trembled, threatening to close in, Sarah took a deep breath, ready to step into the unknown, and the ground beneath her shifted violently. What lay ahead would change everything. The ground shook violently as if the very foundations of the world were about to crumble.
Sarah felt herself tipping into a vast, unfathomable void.
In that dizzying moment, she reached out instinctively for Peter, but the darkness pulled them apart with a relentless force. Her scream bled into the silence, swallowed by an infinite black.
Sarah! His voice echoed, distant yet desperate.
She could barely make out his outline as he fought against the shadows that strove to consume him, his silhouette agitated and twisting.
Don't give up!
She shouted, clawing back from the brink of despair. But the shadows lashed out, coiling around her legs, drawing her down into a suffocating abyss.
Together!
Peter's voice, frayed with panic, pushed her forward, igniting something deep within her. She could feel it, the pulsation of their connection vibrating in the air, a fragile thread defying the urgency of the darkness. With a surge of determination, she focused, battling against the weight that pressed her down.
I won't let it win. I won't let it take you.
She whispered her promise to the void. With every ounce of will she had, she summoned memories, days of laughter, friends wrapped in kindness, moments of warmth that felt a lifetime away. The moment she had walked into the peace and sunshine, oblivious to the shadows whispering underneath. She could hear their taunts again, swirling around her like a storm.
Fight against yourself, prove yourself weak. No! Her voice cracked, fierce and unyielding.
The shadows recoiled at her defiance, but the figure stood unbending, eyes glistening with malicious glee. You may shout, but you know the truth, you cannot escape yourself. Peter pushed against the shadows with all his strength, his hands clawing at the air as if he could grab hold of the light.
Sarah! You have to believe.
A surge of energy flickered within her, like the first rays of dawn piercing through a long night. She remembered who she was before this nightmare, a woman driven by resolve.
I believe.
She screamed, her voice rising above the whispers, louder and stronger.
You are not my truth. I define myself.
In that moment, she felt a warmth enveloping her, a force rising against the cold grip of despair. The shadows howled, a cacophony tearing through the thick veil of darkness, trembling at her defiance.
But the figure's laughter rippled ominously. You think letting go will save you? You cannot escape the burden you carry.
Suddenly, as if stirred by the winds of their courage, the shadows screamed. The walls around them shuddered violently, half-formed memories flashing alongside the chaos.
Faces twisted in anguish. Betrayal wrapped in familiarity.
She was losing herself in the horror of it, and yet, a part of her was awakening, alive with determination.
Peter!
She cried out, half reeling from the horror swirling around them.
I'm here. We're fighting together.
His voice steadied her, wrapping her in a fragile warmth. The walls of darkness were closing in again, but as they stood firm, they began to feel a shift. The shadows slackened their grip, retreating inch by inch against the fervor of their unity.
But the figure won't relent. You cannot hide from the truth, Sarah. Your past will always haunt you. Terror gripped her heart as shapes darted in the dark. She could feel them closing in, moments lost waiting to strike. Were they echoes of her past? Or something far worse? Face it. Face what you fear. Peter urged, struggling against the pull of darkness. If we don't confront it, we'll become one with it. In that moment, a flicker of realization ignited deep within her. Maybe that was the key. To not just fight, but to confront every piece of herself, the fears, the judgments, the doubts. What if she hesitated? What if I embraced the truth? Before she could finish, shadows surged, angry and turbulent, as if sensing a fracture in her will. The air became electric, pulsating with a false promise, luring her to submit. Help me! She gasped, fighting against the tide, staring into Peter's frantic eyes. Together they were a beacon, but would that light be enough to hold back the depths of her darkness? Would facing her truth lead to liberation or doom? As they faced down the figure, shadows roaring around them, Sarah felt the ground shift once more beneath her, this time reminding her that the true battle had only just begun. The ground heaved beneath Sarah's feet, cracking like thunder as the shadows twisted into tortured faces, memories and nightmares clawing to claim her. Yet in the turmoil, a fierce light flickered to life within her. I will embrace the truth. She screamed against the chaos, and the very declaration sent ripples through the suffocating darkness. The sinister figure, the embodiment of all her fears, recoiled momentarily. You chosen one, embrace what you want. It howled, confusion clouding its ghastly features. But the momentary unease quickly morphed into rage, and it lunged forward, shadows swirling like a tempest around it. Not today. Sarah cried, her voice slicing through the thick air. She clutched Peter's hand tighter. Together. A sudden surge coursed through them both, igniting their connection like wildfire. With an overwhelming force, they began to push back against the darkness, each pulse of hope sending the shadows gnashing further back. Stand firm. Peter urged, breathing heavily as they strained against the shadowy tide. As if he were part of her, his courage resonated within her heart, siphoning off the dread that had threatened to devour her whole. We can break this. The cacophony of whispers became a chorus of struggling voices, fighting to break free from the confines of the shadows. Sarah could hear them, the echoes of lives lost in despair, suffocated by secrets. That collage of pain, anger, and longing fortified them both, breaking through her fear and conjuring a strength she didn't know she possessed. As they faced the monstrous figure merging into the darkness, Sarah felt the flicker expand, crashing against the shadows with renewed force. You can't hold us. We are more than your lies. She shouted, unleashing every ounce of defiance. Her voice rang against the walls like a lighthouse piercing through a storm, igniting the sparks of energy dancing from every corner of the room. In a surreal moment, the swirling darkness began to shudder, a body convulsing with the effort of resistance. You dare? The figure shrieked, its voice a snarl, laced with pain. You dare to challenge your truth? Yes. They both shouted in unison, voices entwined like warriors on a battlefield. Your reign is over. And just like that, the ground shifted, it trembled beneath their feet, releasing tension. Shadows screamed, a wailing cacophony as they began to unravel. With each declaration of defiance, the walls pulsed brighter, filling their once dim prison with blinding light, rendered agonizingly bright. But Sarah knew they couldn't stop. Remember who you are. She called to the essence of everyone who had been lost in agony, and the words came like an offering from her heart. You are loved. You are not alone. The shadows, the memories began to take form, faces emerging from the dark faces of victims from the war trial, family members once thought lost. Their desperate eyes glowed with recognition, and Sarah felt their sadness merging with her own, a powerful drive enveloping her. Suddenly, all at once, the shadows reached a fever pitch, bubbling with rage at the intrusion. But it was too late. Sarah and Peter pressed through that barrier of despair, determination igniting every fiber in them. The figure howled in fury, a final desperate attempt to pull them back into the void. Fear is not your master. Sarah shouted, pushing through the final resistance, thrusting the darkness back.
channeling clarity into resolution. With one final push, the light erupted. The shadows screeched, an unearthly sound that ricocheted off the walls as they crumbled, followed by a seismic crack. The figure, confronted with their unity and relentless strength, dissipated in an explosion of raw energy. Finally, silence stretched over the remnants of chaos. Bit by bit, light filled the once dark room, casting away the last shreds of darkness. Breathing heavily, Sarah and Peter stood hand in hand, eyes wide with disbelief and a newfound freedom, echoes of life coursing through them where despair had once prevailed. In the distance, a soft light flickered. Dawn.
Breaking.
As they emerged from the remnants of the warehouse, the town stretched before them, kissed by the first rays of sunlight. The beating hearts of lost souls intertwined with theirs, a quiet promise filled the air. They had reawakened the truth of mourning, yes, but they had added a new layer to the tapestry, one drenched in love and remembrance. Together, they would carry that burden, a story of redemption, as heavy as it was liberating. Walking back toward the town, Sarah reflected that fear may have tried to claim her, but the truth had shown her something vital: she was never truly alone. As they walked side by side, a warmth enveloped her, and she offered Peter a smile, the weight of their battles now transformed into a promise. "We'll rebuild together," she whispered, and he nodded, the morning air warm with possibilities. As the sun poured over the landscape, everything felt different. The era of shadows was at an end, a new dawn awaited. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, and so, dear viewer, remember, the truth can cut, can sting, and even hurt. But in the end, it connects us, binds us to one another, shining brighter than the darkest shadows. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about the ending. And wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to stand with us and keep the flame alive.